Photosynthesis. It's a wonderful journey of energy through plants and then into humans. But let's start out with a deep breath before we dive in to the complex process that we know and love as photosynthesis. Now, to start off with, the question that we're going to delve into is how do cells get energy? It all begins with sunlight. If you remember back to ecology, the first thing in any energy chain is sunlight. So energy for life on Earth starts with sun and then goes to plants, and those plants store this energy in chemical bonds of sugar. And then cell respiration takes that sugar and releases energy for both plants and animals. So they are very similar but opposite processes, where photosynthesis makes energy out of sunlight, and then cellular respiration makes energy out of sugars. So how plants actually get light is through pigments. These pigments are things that we do not have, and therefore we can't go through photosynthesis. The pigments are chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B, and carotenoids. Each one helps out the plant in a different way, and chlorophyll A is the most important because it is a direct help with photosynthesis. Chlorophyll B and the carotenoids are what's known as accessory pigments. These are pigments that just help out photosynthesis. But in general, pigments, specifically chlorophyll, which I'm sure you've heard of, is the one that is most important in capturing the light energy from the sun. So without these, photosynthesis does not occur. So where these pigments are found is more specifically in the cell of a leaf, not in the central vacuole, not in the cell wall, not in the nucleus, but the place where photosynthesis occurs, the chloroplast of the cell. And the chloroplast, the organelle where photosynthesis takes place, has a unique structure. It has a double membrane, an inner and an outer membrane, this stroma, which is the fluid inside of it, the thylakoid, which are those enclosed membranes within the chloroplast, and then the granum is just a stack of thylakoids. And each thylakoid are connected together to form the inner matrices of the chloroplast. So if you look at this structure of a chloroplast, the major thing that you need to note is the fact that it has a double membrane. The thylakoid, more specifically, has a thylakoid membrane and then a thylakoid space. The thylakoid space is very important in the light reaction, but more importantly, just to realize that there is an enclosed space within the thylakoid. So now, actually looking at the thylakoid membrane, this picture shows the inner thylakoid space on top, the thylakoid membrane and the stroma surrounding it. And these different colored balls are actually different enzymes that are going to help with the reaction. What I want you to understand is it doesn't just happen by magic. These enzymes are there in order for the light reaction to actually take place. So the overview of photosynthesis is the fact that there are two reactions going on, the light-dependent reaction and the light-independent or Calvin cycle. And you'll notice there are things moving between them, and what I want you to realize is one can't happen without the other. And you'll also note that the reactants are the light reaction. The reactants are the light, water, and carbon dioxide, and products are oxygen and sugar. So what goes in and versus what comes out. So the two parts of the photosynthesis is the light reaction, which produces energy from solar power in the form of ATP and NADPH. Basically, it makes energy from light, and it holds it into these two forms of ATP and NADPH. The Calvin cycle finishes the formation of sugars using that ATP and NADPH. So it all starts with the sun, goes to the light reaction, and then moves on to the Calvin cycle. So a lot of people used to call the Calvin cycle the dark reaction, but that is actually a misnomer. Don't ever call it the dark reaction, because Calvin cycle cannot actually occur in the dark. It needs the light reaction. It needs sun in order to actually occur, because it needs the energy from the light reaction to take place. So light-dependent reaction is very basic, and it needs light, hence the name light-dependent reaction. The light starts the whole process, and it also uses water. that actually comes out as oxygen. So water gets broken up and gives off oxygen. And then the other products are ATP and NADPH. So this is the specific process occurs in the thylakoid membrane, and you'll see there's an electron going through that actually produces the energy. So it's basically light hits those green balls, which are where your pigments are found. That's where your chlorophyll is found. Energy is absorbed and then released in the form of ATP and NADPH. So the summary of the light reaction are the reactants are water and light energy, and energy products are ATP and NADPH, which are then going to be moved to the Calvin cycle. So the Calvin cycle is also known as carbon fixation, or the light independent reaction, because in C3 plants, which are 80% of plants on the Earth, it uses the ATP and NADPH from the light reaction as energy, and it uses CO2. So it basically takes carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and puts it into sugars. So it makes your organic macromolecules. So this is the whole complex process, but what I want you to understand about that process is the fact that it's a cycle. It needs 3 turns for 1 molecule of 3 carbon sugars, because only 1 carbon dioxide is used per cycle. And 1 carbon dioxide equals 1 carbon sugar. So it occurs in the stroma and it makes sugars. Very, very basic. It uses the energy from the light reaction in order to produce sugars. It also uses carbon dioxide. So the summary of photosynthesis is the sun makes sugars in the chloroplast, the 2 parts of the light reaction, the Calvin cycle, and the fact that it works with cell respiration to create the flow of energy in ecosystems. So if you see the chloroplast, which has the photosynthesis occur, and the mitochondria, which is where respiration occurs, you'll see that the sugars move from the chloroplast to the mitochondria, and then the CO2 and water move from the mitochondria to the chloroplast. So they are actually opposite reactions of each other.